Hello, everybody. So today we are going to get into the culture and achievements of Majapahit to go along with the first video that we did, mainly talking about the history there. So let's jump right into it. And first and foremost, we are going to talk about religion because with Majapahit, you have a very heavy Indian influence. Hinduism was really, really prevalent here to the point where most people refer to Majapahit as a Hindu kingdom. And there isn't a lot of stuff left in this area in reference to Majapahit or in many of the other Hindu-influenced areas. But this is a really, really beautiful area. This is the Prambanan Temple. This is a Hindu temple, World Heritage Site, I believe, by UNESCO. And you can really see some of the classic aspects of Hindu sculpture, of Indian sculpture. There were Buddhists here. Of course, under Srivijaya, Buddhism was the religion, but there was still some Hinduism. And with Majapahit, we're just going to kind of flip it. And it is during this time that we start to see the increase of Muslim influence in the area. Now, we discussed in the last video how the Muslim empires of the Sultanate of Demak and the Sultanate of Malacca are going to really just conquer this area completely. And here, what you start to have Muslims coming in, and there would be some final military interventions by Majapahit actually going after particularly Malacca because they felt that Islam was decidedly different than Hinduism, and we actually see the conflict between Hinduism and Islam in India, and you actually saw that here too. Lots of religious festivals and rituals, and there'll be many, and I'll even reference some things that you see in India today that you also see in Indonesia, and that, of course, comes because these areas adopting things like Hinduism. And here is another picture of the temple. Really, really beautiful. Unfortunately, as far as cities and ruins and stuff like that, we just don't have much. When they were conquered, the areas were pretty destroyed, become overgrown. But I do have a quote here, and it says, "Of all the buildings, none lack pillars, bearing fine carvings and colored. Within the walls of the compound, there were elegant pavilions roofed with aran fiber, like the scene in a painting. The petals of the katanga were sprinkled all over the roofs, for they had fallen in the wind. The roofs were like maidens with flowers arranged in their hair, delighting those who saw them." So just absolutely beautiful. And we can see, again, that Indian influence. And this is one of the few areas that's left. This is the Ringing Lawang Gate, which is outside of the modern-day city of Jatisbasar. And as you can see, you see some of the sloping roof. You see some of these kind of hallmarks of Indian architecture. And we see it in a lot of other places. But just unfortunately in Majapahit, there's just not a lot left. This is another area that you see on the right. These are some of the pictures of the capital city of Trowulan. And again, not a ton of stuff left, but we have some things. Now, administration-wise, or how they ran their capital, we basically see that there were three core areas. There was the capital city, Trowulan, and the immediate surrounding area. And if you want to remember that, you can go look to the map that I showed you in the last video. And we also then have, so that's like area number one. Then area number two was really the rest of the island of Java, and then the island right next to Java, Bali, just to the east of Java. And then we also have the outside territories of the other islands. And these, again, some say they were occupied, some say they won't. I think most of the evidence point to the fact that these were more tributary states, and they were run by, as long as you pay your tribute and you do things like that, we're chill. If you don't, we've got problems. And from what some of the writings that we do have is that the kings ruled with the power of Wahyu. And the idea here, and I'm pretty sure I said that wrong, Wahyu, go with either one. And this is basically the belief that rulers have the divine mandate to rule. And so this is a little bit different than some of the previous, like in Singhasari, they were kind of pushing the idea that of a god king. In this case, they're just saying that the gods have appointed this king. So they're not divine, but they're there because they're supposed to be there. And as a result, that makes their power, I guess you could say, a little bit stronger. And we're going to see this in various other places in the world. Not an uncommon thing to do. As I mentioned, they run a lot of their areas with tribute. And the other big thing that their administration was known for was irrigation projects, not only bringing areas irrigation, because not surprisingly, in Southeast Asia, one of the biggest crops of export were rice, but also making sure that water flowed away from areas so you don't get inundated because, of course, in Indonesia, we're in the tropics, so we get a lot of rainfall. Taxation was really, really important. Everything was done in cash. Yes, that's right. They dealt in cash, no IOUs or anything like that. We do know, however, that they really didn't use a lot of their own money. In fact, they imported Chinese coins, like lead and copper coins, because the fact of the matter is that gold and silver were just way too valuable, and they didn't necessarily want to put that into circulation. And so they bring in Chinese coins, and we find a lot of them there, copper and lead coins, which is what most people day to day were doing. And really, around taxation, they had a festival. The first day of Kaitra or Chatra, if you see this, this is something that comes from India. This is in late March, early April, and it's a festival. Typically, you'll see in India today, it's a festival to get excited for the beginning of spring and the excitement that comes around that. Well, what they did is that they combined this, and as you see the women on the right there, dressed in these very colorful robes and the headdresses and stuff. That's it. Actually, that picture's from 2019. So this is something that was, it's still celebrated today. But they would assemble representatives from all of their tributary states, and that is when you would come and pay your tribute. And so if you didn't show up to that, then you might have the military under like a guy like Gajamata or something like that at your door saying, excuse me, you owe us some money. And so this is very interesting. We combine like a agricultural / religious festival with paying tribute. So really, really interesting way that they did that. But this empire is really known for economics and trade. And it was said that they were incredibly wealthy. We have other civilizations that do have writing about Majapahit. We don't have much on themselves, although we have some. And it was rumored that the rulers every day would just toss like a solid gold bar into a pool somewhere just to show how wealthy they were. But really where their wealth was from was trade. Now, they did have their military navy, but the large part of the navy was a merchant navy. All over Indonesia, you would see the ships of Majapahit. And as I've talked about this before, this area is one of the most important hubs of trade in the entire world, because we're talking, if you control the sea lanes around Southeast Asia, that controls the access from the Indian Ocean to the Pacific, and then up into places like China, Japan, Korea. What you see on the right there is just an example of one of the ships that you would typically see. And one of the main things that they used to support a lot of that was rice production. But the real winner was nutmeg. And I know much of you might not even know what nutmeg is, but it is the spice in this region and actually was the basis of the wealth of Majapahit. I actually talked about, when I talked about the military incursions led by, say, the prime minister like Gajamata, they were going after areas that controlled nutmeg. And so what they would do is make sure that they would have these coastal ports where they could sell particularly the nutmeg, and make sure that they controlled areas and had under tribute of the places where nutmeg grew. Nutmeg is a nut, as you see there, and you shave it up. You can't really eat the nut, but when you shave it, it just makes food delicious. And I know we typically think about empires, yes, they have gold and silver and gems and all this stuff. And the truth of the matter is that's not really the case. What makes an empire is really their economic base. And nutmeg was huge. I mean, it's actually one of the reasons why Malacca is going to come after the people of Majapahit, is to control that nutmeg trade. And then after them, it's going to be the Dutch that come in to control the nutmeg trade because it made people that much money. It's absolutely crazy. Now, some of the other things that we're looking at would be like spices like cloves, which you see up top, camphor, tortoise shell was very prized. On the bottom left here, that's a tortoise shell comb. Things like aloe wood, and then on the right, sandalwood, which are these aromatic woods. Sandalwood, as you see on the right, can actually be distilled down into an essential oil, or you can make it into boxes and something that are very, very fragrant. And one of the things that we see in our writing is that these cities were very, very cosmopolitan, that if you went to an area that was controlled by the people of Majapahit, you would see people from China there, you would see people from modern-day Vietnam, Cambodia, and then you would also have merchants from India and Persia. So Persia, that's modern-day Iran, guys, coming all the way out here to Indonesia. They would live here. They would trade here. Really, really incredible. And again, much of that all run by taxation. The merchants would pay taxes, and that kept the economy going even more. And we also know that we had a bit of art and literature. Probably the biggest thing was this very elaborate wayang puppetry or shadow puppetry, as you see on the right. So it's not like when we think shadow puppets in the West here, we typically think of like using your hands to make like a bunny rabbit or something. No, they would make these very elaborate puppets, as you can see here, out of metal, and then have the light from behind, and then on the other side of the screen, you would have the audience. And so this really wonderful and beautiful puppetry, really, really impressive. We know that this was a very literate society. Panji tales, which were basically romance stories, were incredibly popular. And we also have some nonfiction writing, which is actually most of the information I shared from you we get from something known as the Nagara Kertagama, which was by a Majapahit writer, Papancha, who talked about the function of diplomacy, their economics, their navy. And we do have some writings from China, from the Champa Kingdom. And so we see a really complete civilization, this focus on trade, spices, lots of wealth, supporting things like theater, supporting literature, and really was an incredible civilization. Unfortunately, they just got matched up against somebody they couldn't beat, and they fell. All right, guys, so hopefully that gives you a little bit more information on understanding the cultural aspects of the Majapahit. I hope we learned a little something new, and I'll see you guys soon.